You wake up in winter, and the power is out, the heat is gone, and modern life grinds to a halt. But for centuries, Japanese mountain monks deliberately built monasteries where -20 degrees Celsius winds cut like knives, all without a single modern heater. Their secret wasn't just faith, it was survival engineering so advanced that their sanctuaries still stand after 500 years. How did a spiritual quest become an architectural triumph over nature? Centuries ago, the mountains of Japan drew seekers not for comfort, but for challenge. In the 7th century, the legendary ascetic Anno Gyoja left the warmth of villages below and climbed into the snowbound peaks, founding a path that made hardship its core. For him and the generations that followed, the cold was not an enemy to defeat, but a teacher. This tradition became known as Shugyo, spiritual training through direct confrontation with nature's extremes. The monks who walked in Inno-Gyoja's footsteps believed that enlightenment could only be reached by testing the limits of body and mind. Enduring biting winds and deep snow was not a punishment, but a deliberate act of faith. The mountain itself became a crucible, forging discipline through adversity. A senior Yamabushi, reflecting on his own winter training, once said that the mountain strips away all comfort. Each breath in the frost teaches humility. Only by accepting the cold can we uncover our true strength. This ethos shaped every decision, from the choice of where to build to the daily rhythm of monastic life. Survival was never separated from spiritual purpose. The monastery's walls and rituals grew from the same root, the conviction that hardship was the path to awakening. In these high places, monks found meaning in struggle. The cold, relentless, and absolute became a companion on the journey toward self-mastery. Their faith demanded more than belief. It required endurance, ingenuity, and the willingness to meet nature on its own terms. This was not a retreat from the world, but a deliberate step into its harshest realities, where every stone and beam echoed the resolve of those who came to learn from the mountain itself. South-facing slopes in the Japanese mountains offered more than a view. They provided a measurable survival advantage. Monasteries like Yamadera and Togakushi were sited where winter sunlight could reach deep into the structure, even as the valleys below lay in shadow. By mapping the sun's path across the sky, monks learned that a south slope could capture up to 25% more solar energy during the coldest months compared to a north-facing hillside. This passive solar gain was not theory, but necessity. When the temperature dropped to -20 degrees Celsius, every extra ray of sun mattered. Topographical studies from these regions reveal a careful pattern. Buildings clustered on terraces cut into the southern face, backed by cliffs or dense forests that broke the force of prevailing winds. The terrain itself became the first line of defense, sheltering the monastery from icy gusts that could strip warmth from stone and timber. Where possible, natural rock outcrops or ridgelines were chosen to block the north wind. In some places, dense groves of cedar or beech were left standing as living windbreaks, their branches catching snow and slowing the wind before it reached the walls. Access to water shaped every decision. Springs and streams, often fed by snowmelt, provided drinking water and supported daily rituals. Monasteries were rarely built on the highest peaks, where exposure was total and resources scarce. Instead, they settled at elevations between 500 and 1,500 meters, high enough to avoid flood-prone valleys, low enough for manageable winters and reliable water. Water access influenced placement as much as exposure to sun and shelter from wind. This strategic siting laid the groundwork for everything that followed. With the ground itself optimized for sunlight, wind protection, and water, monks could design structures that made the most of what nature offered. Before a single stone was set or a beam raised, the mountain's contours dictated the logic of survival. The architecture that would rise here was inseparable from the land beneath it. Stone footings, sunk as deep as 2 meters into the frozen earth, formed the backbone of mountain monasteries built for survival at -20 degrees Celsius. These foundations went well below the frost line, anchoring each structure against the constant threat of heaving soil and shifting ice. In regions like Tohoku and the Japanese Alps, frost could reach depths of 1.5 meters or more. Monastic builders responded by digging even deeper, stacking heavy stones without mortar, allowing for drainage and stability through centuries of freeze and thaw. The result was a base that could outlast earthquakes, snowmelt, and the relentless pressure of time. Above these footings, the walls rose in thick, layered assemblies. At Yamadera and Togakushi, surviving walls measure between 60 and 80 centimeters, over twice as thick as a modern residential wall. The core often consisted of stone or packed earth, sometimes 30 to 40 centimeters wide, acting as a thermal battery. This mass absorbed sunlight and the heat from charcoal fires during the day, then slowly released it through the long, cold nights. Timber framing, crafted by Miyadaiku carpenters using interlocking joinery, wrapped around this core. Without a single nail, the beams flexed under the weight of snow, sometimes 2 meters deep, while the structure held firm. The joinery, refined over generations, allowed for subtle movement and prevented catastrophic cracking or collapse as conditions shifted. Roof geometry was just as deliberate. Monasteries in heavy snow zones adopted steep pitches, often between 45 and 60 degrees, to shed drifts before they could crush the structure. Eaves extended well beyond the walls, directing meltwater away from the foundation and shielding the lower courses from wind-driven ice. This combination of mass and flexibility meant that even after a century of storms, many original beams and stones still bear the marks of their first builders. Windows were few and small, punched mostly into southern walls to admit light and precious warmth, but never so large as to weaken the envelope. Every element, the depth of the footings, the thickness of the walls, the angles of the roof, was calculated for endurance. These choices were not just about withstanding the cold, they were about creating a stable, resilient shell that could support both daily survival and spiritual practice for generations. In the hands of a skilled Miyadaiku, the act of joining timber to stone became a kind of teaching, each mortise and tenon a lesson in humility before nature's force. Inside the thick stone and timber walls, a second line of defense against the cold took shape. Monastic builders packed the cavities between framing with organic materials, bundles of rice straw, dried moss, and layers of clay. Each element served a purpose. Straw and moss trapped air in countless tiny pockets, forming what modern engineers call a dead air barrier. These air gaps slowed the escape of warmth, acting as a natural insulation layer whose effectiveness rivals some synthetic materials used today. Historical analogs estimate that a 10-centimeter layer of tightly packed straw can approach an R value of 2.5 to 3 per inch, nearly matching modern cellulose insulation. Clay, harvested from riverbanks or dug from the mountain itself, sealed the straw from moisture and pests. When mixed with hemp fibers and pressed into panels, clay created a dense, breathable skin that kept drafts at bay while allowing humidity to escape. On the coldest nights, this combination of straw, moss, and clay could mean the difference between a habitable interior and a freezing cell. The walls, sometimes measuring over 60 centimeters thick, worked as a single thermal envelope. During the day, sunlight and the heat from charcoal fires would slowly seep into the mass of stone and insulation. As temperatures plunged after sunset, that stored warmth radiated back, buffering the sharpest drops in temperature. Floors were raised off the ground, often by a half-meter or more, with a layer of packed earth or ash beneath. This gap prevented the bitter cold of the frozen ground from leaching into living spaces. Tatami mats, woven from rice straw, added another layer of insulation underfoot. Roofs, too, were built in layers: thick rafters, bundles of straw or bark, and clay tiles or wooden shingles, all designed to trap rising heat and shed heavy snow. Surface treatments completed the system. Natural oils, pressed from tung or camellia seeds, were brushed onto wood and clay, repelling water and extending the life of organic fills. The result was a building envelope that could hold on to precious warmth for hours after the last ember died down. Every layer, from the first stone to the final brush of oil, was chosen for its ability to resist the relentless cold. In these mountain monasteries, insulation was not an afterthought. It was a matter of survival, woven into every wall, floor, and roof, linking the efficiency of ancient materials with the careful management of heat that would follow. Charcoal was the silent engine behind winter survival in mountain monasteries. As autumn leaves fell and the first frost crept down the slopes, monks turned to the forests below for fuel. Hardwood trees, oak, beech, and chestnut, were felled and stacked beside earthen kilns, where the slow, smoky, low-oxygen burn of charcoal making began. These kilns, built on sheltered terraces just below the monastery, operated for several weeks each year. The controlled, low-oxygen burn transformed wood into dense, nearly pure carbon. By early winter, piles of charcoal, lightweight, dry, and slow to burn, were carried up narrow stone paths in woven baskets, each load a hard-won investment against the coming cold. Inside monastery walls, heat was never centralized. Instead, a network of small hibachi braziers and sunken irori hearths dotted the main halls and sleeping quarters. Each fire was modest, designed to burn charcoal steadily for hours, releasing warmth into the thick stone and timber around it. Rather than a single roaring blaze, monks relied on the even distribution of multiple small fires. This approach conserved precious fuel and allowed for careful control. One hearth in a meditation room, another in the communal kitchen, a third in the sleeping quarters. The steady low flames produced little smoke and, paired with the massive thermal core of the building, kept interiors livable even as the outside world froze solid. Charcoal stocks were managed with discipline. Monks rationed each handful, knowing that a careless burn in December could mean a freezing cell by February. The entire system, from kiln to hearth, was designed for efficiency and safety, ensuring that every ember contributed to the delicate balance of warmth and air that made life possible at -20 degrees Celsius. Inside a mountain monastery at -20 degrees Celsius, every ember carries risk. Charcoal burns clean, but without careful management, it can become deadly. The monks engineered a system of chimneys and vents, each calculated to keep air moving just enough. Too little ventilation, and carbon monoxide from the hibachi fires could build up, an odorless danger that claims lives quietly. Too much ventilation, and precious heat would slip away, forcing fires to work harder and burning through winter fuel reserves. Thermal engineers studying these ancient halls point to the stack effect, the principle where warm air rises, drawing cooler air in through low vents and pushing spent air out through flues high in the walls or roof. In practice, this produced a continuous exchange, about 1 to 2 full air changes per hour. Historical measurements and modern sensor tests at Koyasan and Yamadera show that this rate keeps indoor carbon monoxide levels below 10 parts per million, even on the coldest nights. Humidity control was equally important. The slow burn of charcoal releases moisture, and snow tracked in from outside could quickly tip the balance. Without enough airflow, dampness would breed mold and rot, threatening the very structure meant to protect. The monks developed a delicate choreography of open and closed vents, adjusted throughout the day. It was a system that demanded vigilance, a discipline as rigorous as any meditation. With these methods, indoor fires became not only possible, but reliably safe. The breath of the monastery remained warm, fresh, and life-sustaining, even when the world outside froze solid. A monk steps out before dawn, breath curling in the air, layers of wool and hemp wrapping his body against the cold. Under the white robes, there is a silent system at work. Silk closest to the skin and wicking away sweat, while thick wool and hemp trap warmth in pockets of air. These garments, measured at up to 2 kilo units in laboratory tests, rival the insulation of modern winter jackets, and they remain breathable for long hours of movement and meditation. Hands and feet are shielded by straw mitts and tabi, keeping blood flowing even as the stones freeze beneath them. Clothing is only one piece. Each meal is a calculation. A bowl of miso soup, rice, and fermented beans delivers 3,500 to 4,500 calories a day. Fats from sesame oil and chestnuts fuel the body's internal furnace, while proteins rebuild muscle broken down by labor and cold. Warm tea and soup are taken in small, frequent sips, keeping core temperature stable through the long hours of zazen. Breath is the final tool. In the silence of the meditation hall, monks practice slow, deep breathing, susoku, drawing heat into the abdomen. Modern studies show skin temperature rising 2 to 4 degrees Celsius after 20 minutes of focused breath work. In laboratory settings, thermal cameras reveal the body glowing with retained heat, even as the room hovers just above freezing. The monk's body becomes its own hearth. Every layer, every breath, every calorie working in concert to hold the cold at bay. In a quiet room lined with cedar shelves, the head archivist at Yamadera draws out a ledger from the winter of 1835. The paper, browned at the edges, lists charcoal orders in careful brushstrokes, twice the usual amount for that year, a response to the record-breaking cold that swept through Yamagata. Each entry, stamped and signed, reveals the rhythms of survival. More fuel delivered as temperatures plunged, rationed carefully to last until the spring thaw. These ledgers, some dating back to the late Edo period, track not just supplies, but the discipline behind every decision. Elsewhere, conservation engineers study the beams supporting the main hall. A core sample from a weathered cypress reveals more than 800 rings. Dendrochronology confirms the timber was felled in the 12th century, matching the earliest written records of continuous occupation. Even after fires and earthquakes, the original structure was rebuilt using surviving beams, preserving the lineage of both wood and tradition. Together, these artifacts, inked lines in a ledger and tree rings sealed in ancient timber, offer material proof that the monastery's endurance is no legend. Every winter, for centuries, monks adapted, recorded, and rebuilt, leaving a trail of evidence as solid as the stone beneath their feet. While millions now depend on fragile grids, Japan's mountain monasteries still stand, proof that resilience is engineered, not bought. As climate extremes grow and blackouts become headlines, the monk's legacy asks whether we are building for comfort or survival. Endurance isn't ancient history. It is a blueprint waiting to be reclaimed. What would true resilience look like for us today? Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts below.